let's step back. How big of a situation is this really? The thing we always look at, is this a mistake of the head or a mistake of the heart? Right? If it's a mistake of the head, we can probably deal with it. If it's a mistake because that's the person that you are, that's how you behave, now we've got a much bigger issue, and we're going to have to probably deal with that in a much different way.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am so excited this morning that I have the Chief of Meridian Police, Chief Tracy Basterrechea. We are going to be ethnic about it because we have flair. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad
Yes.
to be here for sure.
I'm so excited because you're good friends with a good friend of mine, Carmen, and you have this Basque connection. And aside from that, I think it's, after speaking with you, your passion for all you do, your passion for serving your community is just, it resonates a lot with me. And it's just, I'm very grateful for all of you in law enforcement, and you have such a long-standing career. 30 years in law enforcement, 6 years as the chief.
Yes.
Please share a little bit about your background and how you got to not only come to this place that you're at with law enforcement, but maybe go back further into your family life and let's touch on your culture a little bit and your upbringing.
You bet. So my father is, we're first generation here. My father came here in 1952 on a sheep herding contract. And so prior to that, my grandpa had actually come from the Basque country in 1919 on a sheep herding contract. And he went back to Spain once his contract was up and met my grandmother, married her, and they started a family. And so my dad was born in the middle of the Spanish Civil War. The day that they bombed Guernica and the countryside there, his mother and him were on their way to the market to take things there, and they ended up hiding under a bridge, and he was about 2 years old then when that happened. And so after the Spanish Civil War, it just was not a great place to be Basque. You couldn't speak the Basque language. You couldn't fly the Basque flag. I have a friend, Iker Goricho. His father was actually born in a Spanish prison because his mother was arrested for speaking Basque in public. And so that was one of the things that would happen. And he was born in prison. He was one of the lucky ones. He was brought back to his mother when he was 5, or his father was, and let out of the prison. But a lot of those Basque kids were actually sent to wealthy Spanish families that couldn't have kids. So he was very fortunate. His dad was. One of the other things they would do is they would shave women's heads to publicly humiliate them for speaking Basque. And so my grandpa, my Aichicha, he really knew that he wanted a better life for his boys. He had 4 boys and a daughter. And so he actually sent a picture of himself with another Basque shepherd that was coming back to Idaho, and asked him if he would take it to his old employer and see if they would bring him back. And we always laughed because they called him Georgie. His name's Gregorio. And he was pretty big for a Basque guy. He was a Basque strongman, lifted the rocks. And they took the picture back, and the sheep foreman looked at it and said, "Oh, Georgie, yeah, he was a great worker. We'll bring him back." And so he brought my dad with him. They had to pay a little bit of money under the table to the Spanish government to actually get a visa and all of those things to come here and work. And so, once my dad was here, my grandpa was just very, very pro-United States. My grandpa, or my dad, tells the story. They were sitting in sheep camp, and at the time, it's at the height of the Cold War, and my Aichicha is telling my Aita, he says, "You're in the greatest country in the world. You can be as successful as you want to be as long as you have good work ethic and you do things the right way." And my dad, being 17, very little education, said, "Yeah, but what about the Soviet Union? They're the other superpower in the world." And this sheep herder, right, tells him, my Aichicha says, "That form of government will never work. You can't keep your thumb on a people because people naturally want to get better and they want to be successful." And so I've always remembered that. And one of the unique things, I think, is We've never called ourselves Basque Americans. My dad has always emphasized that we are Americans of Basque descent. And so very, very just pro-American, pro-United States, growing up in our household, and not a real touchy-feely household, not a whole lot of hugging or those types of things growing up, but we knew that our parents loved us. My mom was a super hard worker, great cook. We had people at our house all the time for meals and those types of things. And I think that was one of the things that me and my brothers figured out through our parents, was just treating people well, treating them for who they are, not because of what they are or what their background is. You know, they just were hard workers and treated people well. My dad they both were pretty hard. My dad was real hard on us. I mean, we didn't get away with anything. He just, you work, you do the right things, you don't get in trouble. Growing up, you respect the police, you do all of those things. And that's really how we were raised. And so growing up, my oldest brother decided he was going to become a police officer. He had wanted to be a police officer from the time he was a little kid. That was always his goal. And then my middle brother was the brain of all of us, and he went into accounting and had his own accounting firm. And then I was either going to I wanted to teach high school and coach wrestling. That was kind of my goal, or I wanted to go to law enforcement. I wasn't sure. And so when I was talking to my brother, my oldest brother, about, going into law enforcement or teaching, he gave me some great advice. I always say really some of the only good advice he ever gave me. Not true, but, and he told me, he just said, listen, get your degree in education, because if you get a degree in criminal justice, you really can't do anything with it if you don't like being a police officer. If you get a degree in education and you become a police officer, he said, if you don't like it, you can always go back and teach. And so I still wasn't real sure which direction I was going to go. And so he was a Boise police officer at the time, and I was going to Boise State and doing ride-alongs with him a lot. And we're on a ride-along one night, and we get the call of this car burglar in the north end of Boise, and we roll up on him and we catch him, and the guy goes to take off running, and I don't even think about it. I jump out of the car, chase this guy, tackle him in the front yard just as my brother's chief is pulling up, or his sergeant. And his sergeant is not a very happy person when he sees this, for good reason. And he has a few choice words with my brother, and my brother's like, he jumped out before I could say anything. And so I was kind of hooked then. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then I did my student teaching, and really where I did my student teaching, there seemed to be really a lot of lack of accountability. And I kind of had a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth about that. And I was like, I think law enforcement's the route I'm going to go. And I haven't looked back since. It's been a phenomenal career. Been very fortunate. My background in education has been very beneficial for being an instructor and teaching and doing those things. So, great career.
I think life happens the way it's supposed to. A lot of times, if you're open to just allowing the chips to fall where they may, and you're really trusting in terms of this is the path that I want to go on, right? For you to have gone through education, smart to still get that degree. I mean, great advice from your brother, but also, yes, for you to now, it does facilitate it being a little easier when you're instructing and coaching and teaching. So that's great. I love that you've always been in Meridian, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've been in Meridian for 30 years in the Meridian PD. So you've had quite a fun, I would say fascinating, but probably fun for you, journey through the different roles and departments you've been in the PD. Can you share a little bit about how you got started there?
Yeah. So I started as a patrol officer. And again, when I first applied at Meridian, I was dating my now wife, And she was pretty sure that I was going to be a teacher and would be fighting fire for the BLM in the summers. That's what I did to help pay my way through college. And I won't say she was shocked, but she was a little surprised when I was like, "Oh, hey, I got this test with Meridian Police Department and these things." And so she's been with me. We've been married as long as we got married in June, and I started with Meridian in September of '96. And so she's been with me the entire time. Very, very fortunate to have that support network through the ups and downs. But started out as a patrol officer, and at the time, Meridian was small, and turned out being at a small agency ended up really benefiting me, I think. I had a lot of opportunities early on that I wouldn't have had otherwise. They made me a drug recognition expert very early on in my career, and that's basically working DUIs, but from the drug end of things. So when you see that somebody's impaired, but their blood alcohol content doesn't meet the level of impairment, then you go through a lot more tests and things to determine what category of drug they're under the influence of. So I was very fortunate to go through that, work as a drug recognition expert. And then at the time, the Boise Resident Drug Enforcement Administration Office, the DEA, was starting a task force, drug enforcement task force, and bringing on local task force officers to work with the DEA. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that. It helped that I spoke Spanish. I was the only Spanish speaker at the time on the task force. So I got to do a lot of great undercover stuff. Got to travel, through the Northwest and California and Arizona, working drug investigations, working undercover. Got to work with some phenomenal people in that role. Worked really closely with the state police, working undercover, doing undercover investigations for them, where I met a lieutenant who's still a lieutenant there, who had a huge impact on me, just because when you're young and you're doing those things, sometimes your ego can get a little bit ahead of your brain, and probably did some things. I thought I was doing them safely. I thought it through. But after one drug investigation or drug buy that we did one night, he pulled me aside, and he lit me up one side and down the other, and told me how stupid what I did was, that he was not going to be the one to go and knock on my door and tell my wife that I got myself killed because I was a hot shot. And he just blew me up. And I have more respect for that guy probably than anybody just because of that. We're very good friends to this day, but I needed to hear that. And a lot of, I was doing a really good job undercover. So guys had let things go that because you're the guy doing those buys, and he really reined me in, and really appreciate that from him.
I guess there's as you're telling this story, there's part of me that's like, oh my gosh, it must be so cool to be undercover. And then on the flip side, now you saying how dangerous it is. Yeah, no, you're committed. You're undercover. So they think that you're legit one of them. That's the whole purpose of being good undercover, right? Is that you're getting things done, illegal, dangerous things. So, okay, now I see. So did you ever feel, I guess from that moment on, did you learn to maybe rein it in a little bit?
Absolutely. When your case handler gives you an ops plan, you follow it to the T, for sure. And one of the things that happened on one of our investigations, we were haggling with the guys that we were going to buy the drugs from, and I really lit these guys up. And he got on me about that as well, and he was like, listen, these guys absolutely don't think any way, shape, or form that you're a cop. They are bought in totally that you're a dope dealer, and now you're trying to go over them to their boss. You're going to get yourself killed if you don't dial it back a little bit here. And made a lot of sense, because a lot of people were like, are you afraid that they're going to find out you're a cop? I was like, not really, because chances are they're not going to kill a cop. They know that that's going to bring so much heat on them, right? They'll cut you off. They'll completely cut ties and probably send guys out of the area. But if they are convinced that you're just another dope dealer, they'll kill you in a heartbeat. They don't care. And so a lot of learning lessons there, and a lot of it's where really I think I grew up really being anti-drug. Never even smoked a joint growing up. May have drank a lot of beers growing up, but then I watched like almost every crime we dealt with had to do with drugs, and being around with watching people who were selling me drugs and their little kids are right there with them, and it just really made me become. I'm absolutely opposed to any type of legalization. I've never seen any benefit from it anywhere. And almost every crime, every societal issue we deal with is stemming from some type of substance abuse from that end of things. So,
Wow. Those days when you were undercover, looking back now, is that something, I mean, I know you're happy and you love your role now, but are there ever those nostalgic moments that you think, oh man, I would love to go back, or was it a chapter, a full circle chapter closed?
Completely close. I mean, I'm not saying I would do it again for sure because it was fun. But, and when my time was up there and the agency was like, okay, you've been in 5 years, we're bringing you out. I was pissed. I mean, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm doing all these cases. Yeah. We've gotten these awards for these drug cases we've done. But looking back after I was out for a little while, I was like, the best thing that ever happened to me, right? We were getting ready. We were wanting to have a baby. And I really started thinking to myself, what am I going to tell my son? Why do I look the way that I look? Why can't he tell people what I do for a living? And I was like, that's really not fair to my family. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I kind of really started looking and going, okay, that was a really good decision that the agency made. There's a reason they pull us out after 3 years or 5 years, whatever the case may be. And so looking back at that, I really appreciated it. At the time, like I said, I was pissed. And I've had conversations with guys that we've pulled out of drug units when I've been, and I'm like, no, it's time to come out. And they're upset, right? And every guy has come back and said, after being out, that was the best thing for me, for my career, and to be able to continue on and grow my career. And so we just have to be willing to accept that and open our eyes and pay attention to there are other people looking out for you, and they're not just looking out for you, they're looking out for the organization and all of those things. And so that was a good thing for me. And so from there, I went and was a patrol sergeant, and which was probably the best job as a in the police department. Cool. Being a sergeant is a great job. You're in the perfect position where I really like mentoring people and coaching people and watching them be successful. And that is a great position where you really get some young officers there, some older officers, and create a team that can really do great things. So I really enjoyed that. And then just started promoting up the ranks, was a patrol lieutenant, was lieutenant over investigations. Enjoyed that. My first day as the investigations lieutenant, again, this is policing, right? And God bless our spouses who stick with this stuff. I'd been out of town for like 10 days teaching at the ILETA conference. And so I get back to town. My wife and I literally just sit down to eat dinner, and my phone rings, and it's one of our patrol sergeants, and they're like, hey, we've got a homicide. And I look at her, and she's like, no way. I'm like, sorry, gotta go. And she's like, can't somebody else? I'm like, no. I said, and realize this is somebody's son or father that's been murdered. And so then there I am working this homicide investigation for the next couple of weeks and those things. And it's a lot on your family life. And I think that a lot of times we get so excited about the job, we forget that. Uh, I missed a trophy hunt when I was working undercover. My brother was so mad at me. We drew it together, and I had guys come to me and literally chew me out because they're like, "You're giving up this hunt. No one ever draws this hunt." And we were working a wiretap, and looking back, I'm like, I was a dummy. I should have went on that hunt. And my brother actually got a Boone and Crockett buck out of the hunt.
Wow.
And I always tell him, you're lucky I didn't go. I would have shot it right out from under you. But yeah, just it's been a great career. I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to work with great people who are great mentors, and we're always trying to make you better. And I think that's kind of the key of really, as you're working in leadership roles in law enforcement, your goal should be to make those people around you better and celebrate their successes. I think that is what makes it a great profession. I think it's why it becomes so tight-knit.
That's also what defines a great leader, too, for those who want to empower and help everyone around them, develop them and grow. And just everyone needs to keep evolving and doing better. And so when you have someone in a very cohesive, it sounds like, environment and force and just team building, that's really beneficial because you feel that really kind of settles and resonates with everybody. I do want to ask about the drug thing. Do you think that, and you've been in it, and yes, you were upset when they pulled you out, but do you think they pull you out? Is there a danger of going too far, of getting lost in it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that there are some people that I worked with who lost their jobs because of ethical lapses that they had. And there was a guy, and we had a bad feeling about him, at least my partner and I did. We were in Oakland, and we were working a case, and they had taken off one of our target's load cars. And so we were dealing with a officer out of there who had worked that case. And it was really weird. We were trying to track down this guy, and we were just missing him a little bit each time. And we asked him, we were like, "We want to talk to your informant." And he said, "Well, it wasn't really my informant. It was this other person's informant. I just and I told my partner, I'm like, something's not right with this guy. Something is not right." And ultimately, he ends up caught up in a scandal down there on these drug investigations and these other things. And we were like, we knew something was off. And so, yeah, I think there is a purpose in pulling people out, especially when they're working those undercover roles and those things. It's easy to create friendships that you really shouldn't create with some of these people. There's a guy that I know from Vegas, and he's taught a lot of class, and same thing. He was doing things on the weekends, right, without officially being on the clock with some of these people that he's dealing with. And they get so caught up in the role that they lose sight of really why they're there and lose sight of where their loyalties should be and where they belong, right?
Okay.
Their value systems become compromised and all of those things. And so I think 5 years is probably a good max to be moving people out.
Okay. That makes
Personally.
sense. Yep, that makes sense because I just think, okay, you build rapport. That's the whole point, to be trusted, to build rapport, to go undercover. But at what point can that cross over? So, and then I think it's just because most of my experience is clearly from movies where I see when people go undercover and they're like, "Oh, you're selling these drugs, like you better try them with us." And I'm like, "Does this happen? Do they have to try the drugs with them?"
So the answer to that's no.
Okay. Wow.
The answer to that's no, unless your life is threatened.
Okay.
Right? If they have a gun to your head, that's one thing.
Okay.
But, I always tell, listen, you're dealing with criminals. And a lot of those guys understand that if you're using your own product, you're probably becoming a liability for them. So they understand that you're not going to use it because you're there to make money. You're not there to be a junkie. Or they realize when you tell them, listen, I'm on parole and I meet my parole officer this week for a urinalysis test, they're like, they understand those types of things. But
Okay.
certainly there have been officers that have been forced to use drugs, and
I mean, the stakes are high.
the
I'll
stakes
just
are
say
very
the
high.
stakes
Yeah.
are high in every aspect of across the board with law enforcement, I think, which is why I, as a civilian, am so grateful for the service that you guys all do, because it's just like, who else is going to do it? Who else is going to protect and serve? It wasn't my calling, right? So I am very grateful, but I'm like, wow, the stakes are so high. So when you do think of the other sides of it and you think, yeah, that's got to be hard on a family life. Yeah, that's on a spouse, on little kids, on missing pivotal moments and just, holidays, whatever
Yep.
it may be. So the balance, let's talk about did you waver a little bit finding the balance in the beginning? Was it just so exciting?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I was fortunate because we didn't have our son until later in our marriage. It would have been horrible. I'm hoping I would have made
Sure.
the right decisions having a son at home, but you never know. And I've seen officers who have completely, ignored that home life and stuff, and it's cost them greatly in the long run. I was extremely fortunate right out of in the academy. There was a instructor, one of our arrest and control instructors. His name was Leroy Forsman. He ended up becoming the chief of police in Nampa, Idaho. Just a huge mentor of mine, and somebody I respect to this day just immensely because of his focus on family. And the thing he told me, his proudest moment in his entire law enforcement career, was that he had missed a handful of his kids' events over his career. And he would take off and go to the events, and he would go back to work, but he made sure he was there for those events. And that always stuck with me. And so I really made that a priority when we had our son. I was like, Leroy said he only missed a handful of his kids' events. I'm going to outdo him. I'm going to do less than a handful of missing my son's events. And so I think having those mentors and those people that really help you with the support structure and explain to you, this career really is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So enjoy every phase of it, but make sure your family's your priority. That it's easy to say and hard to do, but it is absolutely true. Your family has to be your priority.
It's your stability. They're your root. It's typically family, faith, everything. And it's just when you have that, then everything else stems. So that's great that you have that balance and that you have those priorities, because a lot of times when those get lost, and not just in law enforcement, but I think with any career, when you start to put that aside, because yes, there are moments where you really grind, right? Especially in different careers, the grind is different in every career, I think. But when you're just like selling your soul to do the work, and that happens in so many jobs, if you forget where you came from or who's been the support to get you to that point, then really it's very fleeting. There's nothing solid ground.
Yeah. And I think my brothers and I are very similar in that way. We were very tuned into our kids' events as they were growing up, because our dad wasn't. Our mom was, but our dad was working. I mean, he was building a business. He was working. Our parents, there was no doubt about it. They were like, you guys are going to college, right? They never had that opportunity. You guys are going to go to college. You're going to do these things. And so my dad worked literally 6.5 days a week. He took half a day off on Sundays. He would work every Sunday morning up until about noon, 1 o'clock, and then had the afternoon off. Always made sure he attended Mass Saturday night because he couldn't go Sunday morning, and was just always working, trying to provide for our family. And so I think he did a very good job of pointing out to us of he's making a better life for us, and so we need to try to make a better life for our kids. And I think that's what every parent really wants for them. And so in that way, my parents were very, very successful, I think, raising us. But I will tell a funny story, though, real quick.
I love a funny
to tell
story.
you how my dad was. So I would had a trucking company, so we would have to go to the shop every Saturday morning, right? You'd play football Friday night, and then Saturday morning you were up going to work and changing truck tires, washing the reefer units and the trucks and all of those things that you do. And so I get up one morning and I go to work, and there's a roadblock there with the police department in our little town of Gooding. And I pull up and I'm like, I got to go to work at the shop. And they're like, nope, can't get through. We've got a gunman across the street, blah, barricaded subject, blah, blah, blah. So I actually tried to go in the back way to get in. I'm like, this is Gooding. They're not going to have the back road blocked off. And sure enough, they do. I was like, wow, this is okay, pretty impressive. And so I go home. And the minute I walk in the door, my mom looks at me and she says, what are you doing home? And I said, there's a guy with a gun across the street from the shop. He's barricaded. Well, we happen to know the guy. And she's like, I'm not answering the phone when your dad calls. So sure enough, the phone rings. I pick it up and he's like, where in the hell are you at? And I said, hey, I tried coming to work. They blocked me. I even tried coming in the back way. And I said, they wouldn't let me through. There's an armed gunman across the street. And he's like, oh, that's just so-and-so. And this guy was on drugs and had beat up his mom, and she was in the hospital. And so he says, you get your butt back down here. So I go back, and they wave me through, and I have to drive right by the house where this barricaded gunman is. There's cops running around. The state police has their SWAT team over there, and they're all running around with their guns, setting up, doing this big thing. Well, my dad's tired of it because he's losing money if trucks aren't on the road. So they're using his office as their command post. So he walks out into our mechanics bay, picks up the phone, calls this guy, and he's like, hey, so-and-so, this is Louie. He's like, oh, hey, Louie. And he says, you need to put that damn gun down and get your ass out of here. Your mom's in the hospital. She's worried about you, blah, blah, blah. And the dude comes out with his hands up, right? Gives up, surrenders. And then they're mad at my dad because they're like, that's not how negotiations are supposed to work. We're supposed to do it this way. He's like, had some choice words. And he's like, I don't care. I got trucks that got to get on the road.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here. I've got work to do. And they all packed up and left and took the guy away. And I always laugh about that. I'm like, I always tease him. I'm like, you put my life at risk.
Yeah.
You made me drive right in front of his house. He's like, he's not going to do anything, that guy.
You had to get to work.
Yeah.
This is where there's a will, there's a way. And that's such an immigrant mentality
Totally.
too, right? I love it. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if there's someone
Yeah.
barricaded across
He
the
was
street.
like,
you get your ass to work
so
now.
funny.
That's great. Oh, and you went to work
We
on a
went to
Saturday
work.
morning. That reminds me, my grandpa had buildings. My grandpa was in construction, Italian immigrant. And my uncles would spend every Saturday morning going to the building, quote, the building, right, to go work. So then my uncle's best friend started to hang out on Friday nights. And then if he would spend the night, my uncle would sell him on this idea of like, hey, like, we'll get up, we'll have a good day, we'll get like breakfast burritos. And he would get conned into going down. So my uncle, from a very young age, he's like, yeah, you got to work smarter, not harder. And he would like commission his friends, but it was like wrangling them into this like back alley deal, which I think is so funny. And now the boys, his 3 boys, do it too.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is great.
That's funny.
It's a good thing. So, chief for 6 years, what would you say is your favorite, like what brings you the most joy of this role that you're in now? It's a big role.
I think it's the same that's brought me my joy in every role. It's the people that I work with, for the most part. I always tell everybody the best part of the job is people. The worst part of the job is people. But it's people for sure. I love watching the progression of how law enforcement changes and watching our officers be successful and knowing that maybe you had a little bit of a role in their success and what they're doing, and then reminding yourself that you're the old guy, and sometimes you got to be a little more open-minded and watch those officers lead up the chain. I think that's one of the things people fail to emphasize on people. You may be going to work for a sergeant or a lieutenant that maybe you don't like, or you don't like the way they lead, but you can lead up. It doesn't always have to be the person in the role above you that's leading down to the people below them in the chain of command. It's leading up that chain oftentimes, I think, makes us as an organization more successful, and realizing that you have the talented people that are there, and reminding a lot of sergeants and lieutenants and those people that we hire people for a reason. We give them a gun. We give them the ability to take somebody's rights away, right? Lawful arrests, and sometimes maybe even have to take somebody's life. And we trust them to make those decisions. We should be able to trust them to make other decisions out there on their own without having to call a sergeant or a supervisor, or without you being right over the top of them, telling them every step of the way what they need to do. And so I think that's by far the best part. It's what I enjoy the most, is those personal interactions with people and with our community, and talking to just the people in our community. I had a guy come up to me yesterday and wanted to talk to me about our officers, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Where are we going with this? And he's like, they pull me over quite a bit. And I'm like, uh-oh. And he goes, and they're such the nicest officers, and they're very professional, and he goes, I'm just not a very good driver. And I was like, great. But he was very complimentary of them, right? They treat me like a person. They're very professional. They're very cordial. And that's what we want. And so when you hear those things, that, the message that we're putting out to our officers, they're actually listening and they're putting it into play, that is by far the best thing to hear. It's so enjoyable. And watching the newer generation come up and do great things and really take the culture that we've built, and they're making it better. That's I think what I enjoy for sure the most.
So challenges that maybe you've faced in the past, but in a leadership role, or challenges that are kind of ongoing, what are they, if they exist?
Well, I think one of the challenges that we're all facing in law enforcement and as first responders is always going to be the mental health aspect of it. Knowing what's enough, what's too much, and really trying to figure out those balances. And I think we're way better than we were, but I think we're still early enough on. We're still trying to figure out our path as first responders of what really is the best way to go. We had an officer, he hadn't been with us long, and he was in our training program. He was a lateral officer from out of state, and he ended up committing suicide, and he committed suicide on duty. And that was a moment. It was a shock. Nobody in the department really knew what he was going through, because he was just so new to our agency. And I had actually talked to him the day before, and we had a great conversation in my office. He had a autistic son, and I was talking to him about that and just some different things. And he had actually called his dad that night on his way home, was like, oh, I had a great talk with the deputy chief, and we talked about these things. And his dad said, was in a really good place. And the next morning, he ends up committing suicide, like I say, on duty, with his FTO in the car. And it was a shocker. I remember I was getting ready to go teach jiu-jitsu that morning, and my phone rang, and my wife looks at me, and it was my work phone, and I'm like, this isn't good. it can't be good this early in the morning. And I pick it up, and Sergeant at the time is like, I think he was a sergeant. He may have been a lieutenant already, but he's just like kind of hollering in the phone, and I'm like, whoa, 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 slow down, what's happening? And it didn't register at first, and then I was like, okay, and that was a tough moment. And they say that those types of things either tear a department apart or bring it together. And I think it really brought our department together. And, just really drove home to me that importance of, it's one of the things I tell every supervisor, every sergeant, but it really drove it home then that, man, get to know your officers on a personal level so that you do know, you can see signs that maybe they're struggling, or you can realize that they've got things going on at home, and that maybe that's why their work performance is going down at work, or why they're withdrawn. And if you know that, it gives you an opportunity to really step in with that early intervention and try to help them. And so his dad and I have actually become very, very good friends. Since then, I still follow his kids and his wife and what they're doing in their life. But that was hard as an agency, and for me personally hard, because I really pride myself in trying to know what's going on with our officers and those things. And so as the chief, that's one of the things I've really emphasized to our command staff is, listen, if we have someone that is injured, if we have someone that is out for a personal reason, someone that has some struggle at home, I want to know, because I want to be able to personally call them or reach out to them and say, hey, and reassure them, as an agency, we're here for you, and we're here to help you. And one of the things we were able to do, working with a group called Courageous Survival, and working with Daryl Enderlin, that was Matt's dad. We went to the legislature, and we were able to get post-traumatic stress injury covered under workman's comp under the state. And for us as an agency, that has been it's worked really well for us. We've had some officers that have seen some really bad things early on in their career. They were able to go out on workman's comp. Some were able to come back, but some realized that it was just too much this early in their career, and that this was going to be an ongoing thing that you're going to see, and they left the career. But it's been really good at getting a lot of our officers back, and our supervisors have done a great job of, when our officers are on one of those calls, they're like, hey, let's fill out this workman's comp form. Even though you may not be going to claim work, let's document it so that the cumulative effect, we can come back and say, look, here's the calls they've went on, and this is why they need help and need to go out on workman's comp. And our HRs worked really good on developing that for us as well. And we actually had an officer just reached out not too long ago, and we kind of walked them through it. They didn't really want to do it, but our supervisors filled out the form, walked them through it, and I got a nice email from him that he said that he was actually looking at leaving the agency because he lives a ways away and going to work for a smaller agency closer to his house. And he just said, he goes, I was sitting in session with my counselor, and when I told him that the lieutenant and sergeant came to me with the form and filled out, she said she'd never heard of that before, that she's more heard that they discourage you filling out that stuff. And so he said it really reminded him that the organization actually cares about him. And so he's staying and willing to make the long drive, I guess, regardless. So we're seeing those little victories and kind of learning what's working and learning some of the things that aren't working. Our critical incident stress management team has done a really, really good job of bringing the officers in from those calls and bringing emergency responders that responded to those calls with us, as well as reaching out to the dispatchers and even our records personnel to come in there, because our records personnel are reading those reports. A lot of times they're reviewing those videos, and agencies forget that they're now living that trauma as well. Whether that's second or third hand doesn't matter. They're still getting that cumulative trauma. So our CISM team has done a really good job of reaching out to them and taking care of them. And I mean, very, very fortunate. Great people that are involved in that.
And that's a very comforting and a good thing for us to all hear, that you have all these measures in place, that there's so much support. Do you think that it was the loss, like, was this going on before the loss of this officer? Or
Absolutely
it
was
okay.
the loss of the officer.
Okay.
Yeah, it absolutely is
Okay.
the one that really, I think at the time agencies were talking about it,
Sure.
but no one really knew what to do, how to do it. And it definitely drove home that we've got to change. And to be frank, that change was still very slow. I mean, we're finally starting to get there, and we're starting to look at what are we doing and how do we need to reform it, and what do we need to make our peer support look like, and what do those requirements need to be for people to be on peer support and those types of things. And one thing that we learned, I can tell you from peer support, is you have to have absolute confidentiality. We got burned. We had someone on peer support that then couldn't keep their mouth shut, quite frankly. They no longer work for us. But it destroyed the peer support program at the time. We had to start building it back up because, you need to be very intentional about who you're putting on there, I would say.
Sure. It's, nobody can ever imagine what you see and witness and experience and just have to hear and deal with every day. If you're not in it, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. But for those of us who just can't even imagine that, I watch a TV show and I'm like, I think I messed up from this TV show,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
when you're living this every day, I can only imagine how heavy it would be. And you really do have to be those masters of how to compartmentalize each thing, but also to not ignore it, because I guess we've learned, and this has just been mental health across the board in many industries, that the more you suppress and pretend something doesn't exist, the more it exists and the more it's going to almost erupt later. So how completely tragic that it took such a tragedy, right, to really kick everything into gear. But it will be slow, because this has been an agency, across the board, these agencies have never had it. So it's just now implementing and really.
Yeah, when I started, it was, and you'll hear a lot of guys that have been around a while, it was like, suck it up, move on to the next call, do this, do that. I had a guy, supervisor, who told me, don't tell your wife anything that goes on. Don't tell her anything that goes on at work, blah, blah, blah. And again, Leroy Forsman, he's like, talk to your wife. You don't have to tell her the gory details. You don't have to tell every little detail, but they need to know what you're seeing, what you're going through, so they understand that when you come home and you just want to be alone for a half an hour before you come in, or you want to sit in your car for a little bit before you come in and do the family things, they know why. And that was huge. And I tell my wife, I've told her everything that we've seen and done. And, there was a period of time when we had just, for whatever reason, a series of murder-suicides. And husbands, wives, young people, old people, and then murder-suicides of fathers and their kids. And at the time, I was the acting chief, because our chief was away at the National Academy, and I went to every single one of those calls with our officers, because I was like, if they're going to have to deal with this, if they're going to see it, I'm going to be right there with them. I don't know if that was the best thing to do, but I think it sent a message to our guys that, hey, we are here for you, and we can talk about these things. And, I think talking to your officers and letting them know that, hey, I've gone to counseling. Hey, we've had to go to marriage counseling. It lets them know okay, it's okay to do those things, right? Because if you just bottle all of that up, and it's gonna come out, and it's gonna come out in less healthy ways than it should. And you see it, whether it's alcohol, whether it's, cops doing risky behavior, things that they wouldn't normally do, right? Cheating on their wives, doing these just things that they normally wouldn't have done because they're not dealing with that trauma and they're just internalizing it and those types of things. We've got to be better about getting them more healthy releases for sure. And, what does that look like? I don't know. I'll be honest. Sometimes I look at some of the things we're doing and I think myself, I'm like, really? Now we're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to be curious and open your mind up and look at some of those things. But, yeah.
I'm really disturbed at murder-suicide. I can't get over that. Local here,
Local,
a lot?
there was a lot. And I don't know why it was just, it was rampant.
Recent, or was this
No,
like
this
an
was
08, 9?
this was probably, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think when he went. It would have been 2010s, 11, right in that
Recession,
time frame.
like
In
I'm
there.
like the recession.
Yeah, it was.
kind of?
It was. It was just. It was a weird. There was really no tie to it, right? There was nothing that said, "Oh, these people were having these difficulties. These people were having the right." Other than the ones where they had killed their children, was they were split up, right? And it was
Oh my God.
I'm gonna
Oh my God.
basically I'll show you, right? And which I could never wrap my head around of that. And even the older one, no real explanation, no real history of domestic violence, none of those things. But literally, it was just a strange time.
Wow. We went through, I'm going to say, was it mid to late 2000 teens? We went through a series of celebrity suicides, also
Yeah.
hanging. It was rampant. So you're just like, what? Again, I think mental health has been this, let's call it a cloud. The need for mental health, the mental issues have been a cloud for many, many years across the board.
Sure.
In everything. And so the fact that the past few years have really, a lot of people have started to implement programs and protocol in place. Very grateful for that, because I know for me personally, I've had a therapist for 17 or 18 years. I had to switch when I moved to Idaho, which was so hard because you get used to someone.
Yeah.
But I love that neutral third party, and I love being able to they understand how my mind processes sometimes, because I don't know the technicalities of things. But I'm also not seeing half of the things that a first responder or a law enforcement, nothing. So it's a beautiful thing that's in place. I love that. Tell me a little bit about, I love Idaho for the love for police, for the patriotism, for everything. But there are other areas, right? I'm from San Diego. There are other areas where the respect for law enforcement is not like it is here. It's a beautiful thing for me to have come here and be like, I can, like, guns, freedom, love, right? Police flags everywhere. I love it. But when you battle the perception, right? Public perception, how does that how does that affect, I guess, life when you have outsiders or comments from other people coming in?
For sure. We see it all the time. We've talked about it for years. A cop does something wrong on the other side of the United States, we're all getting painted with that same brush, right? And so the thing that we talk about at our agency is really that putting that money in that community bank. Every interaction we have with our citizens should be intentional. Even when you're arresting someone, you can treat them with respect, you can treat them with dignity. Tell every one of our new officers, the time is going to come, you're going to have to use force, and you're going to use force, and you're going to win that conflict. And But when you're done, when they're done resisting, you're done using force. And you're going to dust them off, and you're going to treat them like the human being that they deserve to be treated like. And that goes a long way in those community interactions. And so we build that up, and sometimes we got to pull a little deposit out because we're not perfect, for sure. And I have to remind our officers also, sometimes when they hear things from other areas and they're like, oh, that didn't happen, we would never do that. I remind them, no, it does happen. And you need to realize there are cops like that. And you need to realize there are agencies that do have racism inside their organization, that do have these types of police officers patrolling their streets. We may not do that here, and we better not do that here, or you won't be here very long. But they do that elsewhere. And so when you get somebody from another area, be curious about why their reaction is what it is towards you. I have a friend, he's in the NAACP, and he told me the first time he'd ever been referred to as sir on a traffic stop was when he had got stopped by one of our officers. And he was just ecstatic about it. He was like, they called me sir, and and I was like, for me, it was kind of like, yeah, why, of course they did. But for him, it was very, very different. I'd never been called sir like that on a traffic stop. I'd never been treated this way by a police officer on a traffic stop. And so sometimes we as police officers have to be curious. Why are you talking to me this way? Why are you upset with me? This is just a routine traffic stop. And you might have to let someone vent a little bit. That doesn't mean let your officer's safety down. I always say you can be the nicest guy in the world and you can be the deadliest guy in the world at the same time. And being an asshole is not an officer's safety trait. It just means you're an asshole.
Sure.
So don't be an asshole. It's that simple. It makes your job a lot easier when you can treat people in a respectful manner. And so we get a lot of great support here. And I'll be honest with you, though, there's a lot of people that don't support us here. I mean, you can walk up, quite frankly, you can go to the Capitol here, and there are some people up there that don't really respect law enforcement and don't appreciate us being there and advocating for our profession or our officers or our criminal justice system. And you know what? It's interesting because everyday people do. Everyday people in Idaho do, and they have. And you want to embrace being an Idahoan, you want to come here from somewhere else and be an Idahoan, watch how Idaho's been doing it, right? Guess what? The reason you moved here is because we've built something pretty special here. There's a reason that you came here.
Absolutely.
So maybe once in a while, listen to Idahoans and quit telling us how dumb we are and that you're from our future and you know what's coming, because we've done a pretty good job of keeping this state the way that it is. And we love having people come here and we love having people support us. But also listen to us when we tell you we know what we're doing. I'll tell you this. We have some of the best trained officers anywhere in the United States in this state. And when I use the word progressive, I don't say it in the way that is negative. We have been very progressive in law enforcement when it comes to training and the mental health stuff and all of those things, which is why we've been so successful in keeping Idaho the way that Idaho needs to be. We're very, very fortunate that we've kept politics out of our law enforcement as best that we can. I always tell everybody, when I come to work, regardless of what my politics are outside of work and what my beliefs are, when I am at work, I am apolitical, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be here to interpret what the law says, enforce the laws, and make sure that this community is safe. I'm here to serve this community, period. I don't care whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Libertarian. My job's to look at the law and to police my community as the best that we can. I have people all the time who come and they ask me, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? And when I tell them I'm apolitical, I'll get one or two. Oh, you're a Democrat. I know that's why you're not saying you're a Republican and you don't want to. No, it's none of your. My job as the chief, my job as a law enforcement officer should not be political. Our job is to enforce the laws of the state of Idaho, the laws of the United States, It is to protect the Constitution, police constitutionally under the United States Constitution and the Idaho State Constitution. That's our job. That's it. It's not to tell you how to think politically. It's not to tell you how to think politically. We shouldn't be doing those things.
This is beautifully said. Thank you. This is beautifully said. You had shared something with me when I came to see you in your office. You gave an example of defending or just being at the Capitol for one of the protests.
Yeah.
And when I say like the backlash that people give cops, if you can share that, because it's just such a beautiful reminder of your role as law enforcement, your presence there, and the irony of just the situation. Please share.
Yeah. So it was during George Floyd, and we had come down for lunch downtown, and I knew there was going to be a protest, rally, whatever you want to call it, at the Capitol. So we ate, and I didn't say anything to my family. I just was like, oh, hey, you know what? By the way, there's this protest going on at the Capitol. Let's walk down and let's see what's going on. And so I'm walking with my son, who at the time I think is a junior in high school, sophomore, junior. And walk with my son and my wife, and we're walking along there, and there's a bunch of Boise police officers. There's some state police down there, and there's people with these signs, and they're say F the police, and there's people yelling F the police, and they're yelling at the officers that are there. They're flipping him the bird. They're just being as ignorant as they can to the officers. And my son looks at me and he goes, what are the officers doing here? Why are they? These people obviously don't want them here. And I said, well, Antonio, I said, our job as the police is to protect their First Amendment right to protest. And that's what the officers are doing. And he's like, yeah, but these people obviously do not like the police. I mean, they're saying F you. They're being as vulgar as they can be to these officers. And I said, you're exactly right. And our job is to protect their right to be able to do that. And I said, no matter what your political views are, no matter what your views are towards us as police officers, as towards our government, our job is to protect their constitutional right to do exactly what they're doing. As long as they don't assault an officer, as long as they don't batter an officer, they can say whatever they want to about us. It's horrible. I get it. But that's our job, is to protect everyone's constitutional rights and their constitutional right to protest us right now. That's why we're here. And the funny thing is, in those conversations with my son, I had asked him later, I said, hey, what bothers you the most about me being a police officer and what I do? I go, are you worried that I'm going to get killed, that I could get hurt, that, you know, what are you worried? And he was like, no, I'm not worried about that. He's like, you have 2 black belts in judo and jiu-jitsu, and he's like, I'm not worried about someone hurting you. He said, what bothers me the most is the things that people say about our police officers. And we were going through some stuff at the time with some of our officers, and he said, because it's not true. I've grown up around these officers. I know exactly what they're like. I know what kind of people they are. I've been around them. And hearing them say these awful, lying things about them, he's like, it's not fair to them. It's not fair to their family. And he said that's what really bothers me, is this completely false narrative of who you guys are. And it was a thing that I'd never really thought of. And it really hit home to me that, boy, yeah, think about that being one of these officers who are being singled out, and nobody knows what's really in your heart. They don't know who you are, but they're going to tell the world who they believe you are, and They're going to spin that narrative.
And they're loud.
They're loud.
They're loud. So I think it's also, I get it. Like, I get, not even being attached to law enforcement in a family. I get where your son's coming from with that, because it's just, how can you say these things about these people that I know? And when you really know them, it's a point of pride for us, for most people, to be who they say they are.
Yeah.
So when you have someone contradicting that, but in a very false manner, then you do get defensive.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
especially now, he's just the warm-blooded kiddo. Of course he's going to get like that. I get it. But I think that's what's really hard too, is this just blanket spread accusations, generalizations. It's hard when you have amazing people that you're like, gosh, that sucks.
It
Like,
is,
that's just
and it's hard that you can't respond to every one of them, and it does you no good to respond to them. It's like the people that post the things on Facebook, and my wife's gotten upset at some things and she's gonna say, and I'm like, no, you're not changing their mind, regardless of how ridiculous what they're saying is. You are not going to change this person's mind, so why even waste your time doing it? It's not changing their narrative. Their narrative is what they want it to be, and that is going to be the narrative that they push. And I think I think we have to remind ourselves of that, because it's really easy to get caught up in, I have to defend myself, or I need to do X, Y, or Z, when really, if we're just leading by example, if we're doing those everyday things in our community knows. Our community knows the interactions they have with us on a daily basis. They understand that. And we've seen it tenfold, where these outside people have tried to create hate and discontent in our community, and our community has rallied around our department. And they're like, no, we support our police department, and if this occurred, there was a reason behind it. We want to wait until the investigation's complete. We want to do all of those things. And I think that's a struggle that everybody has right now, is everybody wants information now. We want the investigation done tomorrow. We want the officers' names. That's one of the things our agency still does not do. We don't release our officers' names if they're involved in a critical incident. We don't. That is a criminal investigation that is being done on those officers. We would not release the names of somebody else that we were doing a criminal investigation on. We wouldn't, unless they had been arrested. And those officers should be afforded the same rights as any other citizen. And they are under the Constitution of the United States. And so we don't release that. It comes out in the end when the investigation's complete. And all it does is put their families at risk, and put them at risk when you do that. And I think oftentimes, I've said this many times, I hate the word transparency for law enforcement, because we can't be completely transparent. By law, we cannot be completely transparent. So quit using that word. And I think oftentimes that word is used, quite frankly, by leadership to be able to throw their people under the bus, to take the heat off of them. And our job as leaders are to take those arrows and that criticism and say, no, then when things are complete, when that investigation's done, you'll have all of the information you need. But you think those officers' kids are going to school with maybe a suspect who they killed's kids or family, and is that what we want? We want those kids now exposed to possible bullying and those things, or putting their family at risk. That is an area that I have really fought hard to hold on to for our agency, and will continue until I'm told absolutely you have to go another direction to continue to hold on to that, because I think we owe that to our officers, and we owe it to their families.
Absolutely. I think it's this. We live in a world where you say, even we want it right now. It's because it's happening right now in so many places. So if names aren't being released of officers, oh, don't worry. Someone with a camera has already figured that out. And that's a horrific feeling, I would think, as someone, as law enforcement, because you never know. The threat is imminent in that, because once your name is out, even if you're completely innocent of something, that's what I have found terrifying over the past few years of just seeing what's going on not in our community, thank God, but across the country, where you're just like, why don't you just give it the beat and quit instigating and stop getting in the way of law enforcement? I mean, there are measures in place where you just think, are you stupid? Yeah. What are you doing? It's you're asking for it almost, and then flipping the blame on how dare you, use force against me. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I would have.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, you talk about that. I mean, we've had our officers doxxed, and people at their houses and those things, and had politicians defending it. And it's interesting now, years later, all of a sudden the politicians don't like being doxxed themselves. All of a sudden these activists who were totally in support of our officers being doxxed, now they want rules in place because they're now being doxxed. Very interesting dichotomy when it's now landing in your lap.
Sure. I think it's just there's a procedure for everything. There are laws that need to be followed for everything. And if you just let things unfold as they may and as they should, nobody's going to be in these situations in terms of follow the law, comply with law enforcement. There are so many things. So I thank you for everything that you do for our community and for the agency. And just, you have how many people that you're
We have
in charge of?
145 sworn officers, and I think we're about 205 total employees at the police department.
Do you get a lot of out-of-staters still?
We get a few.
Okay.
Yeah, we still get a few.
Do they like complying with, do they like the Idaho way?
So some do, some don't.
Okay.
Those that don't usually, frankly, don't last with us very long.
Okay.
It is literally the conversations I have with everyone that comes through the door, whether it's a brand new officer or someone from somewhere else. I tell them the easiest way out of our agency is to be an asshole. You got to be able to treat the people within our four walls well, and you would better be able to treat the public that you interact with well. And again, that goes with a suspect. And we understand, right? Situations evolve very quickly, and you may drop a cuss word here and there. We're not going to jam you up for that. If it's a repeated thing where you're constantly swearing at people and doing those things, we're going to have a problem, right?
Sure.
But we have a lot who have really embraced it. I mean, I always laugh because, especially early on, guys were like, man, this is different. I'm like, what do you mean? Someone waved at me today and they used all their fingers on their hand, or we were at lunch and someone picked up our tab, or someone bought us coffee, or they rolled down their window and thanked me for my service. And I always remind them, remember, that's very intentional. That's why we police the way that we police. And we have some laterals that have absolutely embraced that, and you can see it. We've just made a lot of promotions recently, and those people that have promoted, I think, are going to take our organization to the next level. And I think that just once I'm gone, whoever ends up stepping into that role is going to take it at a whole nother level, and it's going to be better than when I was there, and that's what we want. We want to make sure that we're mentoring those people, and that we have a plan in place for when we go, that we have people that are prepared to take that over and do even better things than we think that we've done. We are in a really good place with the promotions that we've recently made, and we are super excited about those people.
And everyone, all the 145 sworn officers, do you find that they are pretty much staying? Like once they come, it's not that they're moving departments or anything. They pretty much stay?
We'll lose a few based on benefits and things like that. But I'll tell you, I can tell you how supportive the community of Meridian is. They just passed a levy with like a almost 80% passage rate to help increase our officers' pay, to help counter some of the benefit discrepancies that we have with other agencies. And so, and like I say, like almost 80% of the people is 70+%. That tells you a lot about that community, and tells you a lot about what our officers that are out in the field are doing every single day, interacting with them, because they're doing a phenomenal job. And, we as a command staff, we kind of laugh about it sometimes that, and we hear it from some officers once in a while. They think we worry so much about the little things and this and that, and we'll be talking about something that we're dealing with and we always have to remind ourselves, look what we're dealing with compared to this agency next door or this agency. Look at the issues they're dealing with. We've got it pretty good. We've got really good people that aren't creating a whole lot of headaches for us. And you have to remind yourself of that a lot, because sometimes you get caught up in the axles of some things, and you're like, well, wait a minute, let's step back. How big of a situation is this really? The thing we always look at, is this a mistake of the head or a mistake of the heart? Right? If it's a mistake of the head, we can probably deal with it. If it's a mistake because that's the person that you are, that's how you behave, now we've got a much bigger issue, and we're going to have to probably deal with that in a much different way.
Okay. You said something to me when I sat with you, and I quoted it. I wrote it down. It said, I think you learned from your parents to the importance of serving people around you.
Yeah.
And I think with everything you've shared, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, because I love the person. Like, I want to know about the person. I'm so curious. So yes, you're the chief. Yes, you've had 30 years, and that's fascinating. And I love that. And I love the stories. But who you are as a human being and how you treat others, and it's just all coming out. And I'm so glad and grateful that I've had this opportunity for you to share this. So you really are a beautiful example of serving people around you. And I thank you for that. And your department and the community is very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else you'd like to share?
No, I think you kind of hit it on the head, though, is it's really about serving others. And I think that's really, to me, that's what leadership is. It's serving those people that we always say we're serving those who serve others, right? Our officers are out there serving every day, and as leaders in any organization, we should be serving those officers and trying to make it as, honestly, I would say, as easy as it can be. Mm-hmm. We always want to make it better for the person coming after you. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that, especially in this profession. We hang on to these dumb things of, well, I had to do this when I was coming up, so we need to make them go through this hazing or this. No, we don't. Our job's to make it better for them, right? Your parents' job was to make it better, a better life for you. Our job as leaders, our job in law enforcement is to make it better for those police officers that are coming after us. That's really what we want. So,
well, thank you for being a role model to the littles, looking up to what it means to be a police officer. And just, you've really shared what an exemplary human being you are. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Bye, everyone.